The blizzard had teeth. Nisara felt them bite into her wings, her tail, every exposed scale on her body, as she stumbled forward through snow that reached her knees. Each gust of wind tried to knock her backward, away from the distant lights that promised warmth, perhaps even mercy. She clutched her babies tighter against her chest. Little Ember, barely 3 weeks old, had stopped shivering an hour ago. Frost, the smaller of the twins, hadn't made a sound since dawn. Their tiny wings translucent membranes of blue and silver hung limp against their bodies. The white scales that should have shimmered like starlight had dulled to the color of old bone. They were dying. She knew it with a mother's terrible certainty. "Just a little further," she whispered, her voice stolen by the howling wind. Her words formed crystals of ice on her lips. "Please, my little flames. Hold on." The memory of her clan's rejection burned hotter than any blizzard cold. She could still see Elder Cassith's face, hard as granite, eyes empty of sympathy. "They are too small, Nisara. Too weak. The winter has been harsh, and we cannot waste resources on hatchlings who will not survive the season. They will survive." She had screamed. "Give them a chance. They're strong. They consume food that could keep warriors alive." Cassith's tail had lashed once, final. "You may take them and go, or you may stay and watch them starve. Choose." She had chosen. She had wrapped them in the thinnest blanket the clan had allowed her, spread her wings against the storm, and walked away from the only home she'd ever known. That had been yesterday. Or was it 2 days ago? Time had blurred into an endless white nightmare. Her legs gave out. Nisara crashed into a snowdrift, her body curling instinctively around her babies, even as she fell. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she barely felt it. The cold had numbed everything except her heart, which hammered with wild desperation. "No," she gasped, forcing herself to her knees. "No, we're close." So close. The lights were brighter now. She could make out Shape's rectangular buildings of metal and glass, so different from the ice caves of her people. Smoke rose from vents, carrying the scent of burning fuel and something else. Food, warmth, life. Humans lived there. The soft-skinned, short-lived creatures her people spoke of with contempt and curiosity in equal measure. Weak beings who needed machines to survive the cold, who had no claws, no scales, no wings, but they had fire. They had walls that kept out the wind. They had survived in this frozen wasteland for years, and some of them, she had heard whispered stories, had shown kindness to the desperate. Nisara dragged herself forward. Her claws scraped against ice-covered stone. Her tail left a serpentine trail through the snow. Frost slipped from her grasp, and she sobbed as she gathered him back, pressing her snout against his tiny head. "Don't leave me," she breathed. "Please don't leave me." The world tilted. She was on a road now, she realized dimly. Smooth black stone cleared of snow by human machines. The lights were so bright they hurt her eyes. A wall loomed ahead, topped with wire and metal bars. She reached the gate just as her strength finally abandoned her. Nisara collapsed onto the frozen ground, her wings spreading reflexively to shelter her babies one last time. Blood, her own blood, stained the snow beneath her. When had she been bleeding? She couldn't remember. "Help," she whispered to the cold metal gate, to the blinking camera mounted above it, to anyone who might hear. "Please help them." Darkness crept into the edges of her vision. Her eyelids were so heavy through the gathering fog, she heard sounds. A door opening, footsteps crunching on snow. A human voice, deep and male, saying something sharp and urgent. She tried to lift her head but failed. Strong arms impossibly warm slipped beneath her shoulders. More arms carefully, so carefully, lifted Ember from her chest. "No." The word came out as a hiss. She tried to lash out, to protect her babies, but her body wouldn't obey. Easy, easy. The deep voice again, closer now. I've got them. I promise. I've got them. Someone was touching Frost, taking him. She wanted to fight, to scream, but all she could do was whimper as her babies were lifted away from her. Mother of mercy, they're ice cold, a different voice said. Female, younger. Are they even alive? There's a heartbeat. Faint, but it's there. Both of them. The male voice held a note of wonder. Get them inside? Now. Heat lamps, thermal blankets, everything we have. What about her? A pause. Then those warm arms were lifting Nisara herself, cradling her as gently as she'd cradled her children. She forced her eyes open, just enough to see the face above her. A human. Young, maybe 30 seasons. Dark hair dusted with snow. Eyes the color of amber, wide with shock and something else. Determination. Her too, the human said firmly. All of them. Nobody dies on my watch tonight. The darkness finally claimed her as she was carried through the gate. But in that last moment of consciousness, Nisara felt something she hadn't felt since. Her babies were born. Hope that the research station's common room had never been designed for this. Torrin Ashvale paced in, front of the medical bay door for the 3rd hour straight, his boots wearing a pattern into the floor, his hands wrapped in bandages from grabbing the frozen dragon babies with his bare skin, throbbed with each step. He didn't care. Inside that room, 3 lives hung in the balance. 3 beings who had appeared out of a blizzard like something from a fairy tale. Except fairy tales didn't come with frostbite and hypothermia and the very real possibility of death. You should sit down, Helena said from the couch. His sister had arrived yesterday, before the storm hit, for one of her rare visits. She held a steaming mug of coffee and watched him with concerned eyes. You're going to collapse. I'm fine. You pulled 2 infant dragons out of a snowbank with your bare hands, then carried their mother through a blizzard. You're not fine. You're barely standing. Torrin stopped pacing and pressed his forehead against the cold metal wall. They're so small, Helena. The babies ... They fit in my hands. How is anything that small supposed to survive weather like this? They won't, not without help. Helena stood and crossed to him, resting a hand on his shoulder. But you gave them that help. Whatever happens now isn't on you, isn't it? He turned to face her. What if I was too late? What if... The medical bay door opened. Marissa, their station medic, a tough woman in her 50s, who'd seen everything from mining accidents to heart attacks, stepped out. Her face was unreadable. Torrin's heart stopped. Well? He demanded. Are they alive? Marissa's stern expression cracked into something that might have been a smile. All 3? The mother is stable. Exhausted, malnourished, suffering from exposure, but stable. She need rest and care, but she make it. The relief hit Torrin so hard his knees almost buckled. And the babies? Trickier. They were minutes from organ failure when you brought them in. The smaller one especially. Marissa paused, and her voice softened. But whatever you did, holding them, breathing on them, talking to them, it made a difference. Their core temperatures started rising before we even got them under the lamps. It's like your warmth. Jump-started something. Helena made a small sound. Can we see them? Marissa hesitated. The mother just woke up. She's scared, disoriented. She doesn't speak much standard, and she keeps trying to get to the babies. I had to separate them temporarily for treatment, but she's not taking it well. Let me try, Torrin said immediately. Let me talk to her. Torrin, please. He met Marissa's eyes. I made her a promise. Let me keep it. After a long moment, Marissa nodded and stepped aside, The medical bay was warmer than the rest of the station, heated to compensate for the dragon's cold-adapted physiology. Torin entered quietly, his eyes adjusting to the dimmer lighting. The dragon mother was on a bed in the corner, though bed was generous. It was more a nest of blankets and cushions Marissa had thrown together. She was smaller than Torin had expected, no bigger than a large horse, with scales that shifted between blue and white depending on how the light hit them. Her wings were folded tight against her back, torn and ragged at the edges. She was staring at the incubators across the room, where her babies lay under heat lamps. Her entire body trembled. "Hey," Torin said softly in the dragon tongue he knew only a handful of words from trading post interactions. "Safe. Baby safe." Her head snapped toward him, her eyes brilliant silver with slitted pupils fixed on him with startling intensity. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she spoke. Her voice was rough, raw from screaming into the wind, but the words were careful, halting standard. "My ... children. Let me see them. Soon," Torin promised. He moved slowly, telegraphing every motion, until he stood between her and the incubators. "They need treatment, medicine, but they're alive. Both alive. You hear me? Both." A shudder ran through her body. "You? You didn't let them die. I promised I wouldn't." She stared at him for a long moment, and Torin was struck by the intelligence in those alien eyes. This wasn't some mindless beast. This was a mother who had walked through hell to save her children. "Why?" She whispered. "We are nothing to you. Nothing to humans." Torin thought about his empty apartment back on the mainland. His workshop where he spent 18-hour days fixing machines because it was easier than going home to silence. The way he'd volunteered for this isolated posting because being alone on purpose was better than being alone by accident. "Maybe I needed someone to save," he said quietly. "Same as you needed someone to save you." Something shifted in her expression. The fear didn't leave, but it was joined by something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. "I am Nisara," she said, "of the Frostwing clan. These are my children, Ember and Frost, Torin." He managed to smile. "Of the, well, no clan. Just Torin. Just Torin." She repeated his name carefully, tasting the syllables. Then, with great effort, she pushed herself up on trembling arms. "Please, let me hold them. Just for a moment." Torin looked back at the incubators. The baby dragons were stable now, their tiny chests rising and falling with steady breaths. Marissa would probably kill him for this. He went to the first incubator, the larger baby, Ember, and carefully lifted the warm, blanket-wrapped form. The dragon kit was no bigger than a house cat, with scales like polished sapphire. Tiny horns, still soft, protruded from its head. Nisara made a sound half-sob, half-croon as Torin placed Ember in her arms. She curved her body around the baby, her wings coming up to shelter it, tears streaming down her scaled face. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you, thank you." Torin fetched Frost next, the smaller twin, and settled him beside his brother. Nisara gathered both babies to her chest, and for the first time since she'd collapsed at the gate, she looked whole. He should leave. Give them privacy. But something kept him rooted to the spot, watching this alien mother with her children, feeling something crack open in his own chest, something that had been frozen solid for 3 long years. "Torin?" Nisara looked up at him, silver eyes shimmering. "Will you ... stay? Just for a while?" He pulled up a chair and sat down beside the makeshift nest. "As long as you need," he said. Outside, the blizzard raged on. But inside this small room, something warmer than fire began to bloom. 3 days passed like a slow thaw. Watched the human world from her corner of the medical bay with equal parts wonder and wariness. The machines beeped their strange rhythms. The lights hummed constantly, never flickering like flame. And the humans, they moved so quickly, always rushing, always busy, as if stillness meant death. Only Torin moved differently. He came every few hours, sometimes carrying food, sometimes just sitting in the chair beside her nest. He didn't rush. He didn't demand. He simply ... was. How are they today? He asked on the morning of the 4th day, settling into his usual spot. He held 2 mugs, one for himself, one filled with warm broth for her. NYS Sarah accepted the mug carefully, mindful of her claws. Ember ate this morning. Real food, not just milk. He tried to breathe fire. Torin's eyebrows shot up. Already? That's good, right? Very good. She couldn't help the pride that crept into her voice. He managed a small spark. Burned his own tongue. She gestured to the sleeping baby, curled against her side, his snout wrapped in a tiny bandage. But it means his inner flame is growing. And Frost? Her expression dimmed. Still weak. He eats, but not much. He sleeps more than his brother. She stroked the smaller twin's head with one careful claw. I fear the cold damaged something inside him. He's getting stronger every day, Torin said firmly. Marissa says his heartbeat is steadier. His breathing is deeper. Give him time. Time. Nisara tasted the word like something foreign. My people believe weak hatchlings should be left to the ice. They say it strengthens the clan. Her voice went bitter. They said my babies weren't worth the food to keep them alive. Torin was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but edged with anger. Your people are wrong. She looked at him sharply. You don't understand our ways. I understand that anyone who'd let babies freeze to death is wrong. I don't care what species we're talking about. He met her gaze steadily. Every life is worth fighting for, especially the small ones who can't fight for themselves. Something in Nisara's chest tightened. She'd expected humans to be soft, foolish, naive. But there was nothing soft about the steel in Torin's eyes. Nothing foolish about the way he'd burned his hands saving her children. Why did you do it? She asked suddenly. That night. You could have closed the gate, turned us away. We would have died, and you would never have known. Torin stared into his mug. 3 years ago, I had a wife, Emma. She was ... everything. Bright and funny and brave. She worked in geological surveys, loved exploring ice caves. He paused, and pain flickered across his face. There was a collapse. They found her body 2 days later. I'm sorry, Nisara whispered. After she died, I stopped seeing the point of things. Work, friends, life. I took this posting because it was isolated, because I didn't want to be around people anymore. He looked up at her. Then you showed up at my gate, dying, with 2 babies who needed someone to care if they lived or died. And I realized ... I still cared. I thought that part of me was frozen solid, but it wasn't. It was just waiting. Their eyes met across the space between them. Nisara felt something shift in her chest, something warm and terrifying and impossible to name. You're Emma, she said softly. She was lucky to be loved by someone like you. I was the lucky one. Torin smiled, sad and genuine. But she wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life alone, mourning. She'd want me to... He gestured vaguely. Find reasons to keep going. Before Nisara could respond, Ember stirred and let out a demanding chirp. She looked down to find him batting at her with tiny paws. His eyes bright gold, like molten metal fixed on Torin. I think someone wants attention, Torin said with a laugh. He likes you. Nisara carefully lifted Ember, who immediately reached toward the human with grasping claws. He's never seen a human before, but he knows your scent. Knows you're safe. May I? Torin extended his hands. Nisara hesitated only a moment before placing her son in Torin's arms. The human cradled Ember against his chest, and the baby dragon chirped happily, nuzzling into the warmth. "Hey there, little flame," Torin murmured. "Feeling stronger today?" Ember responded by attempting to climb up Torin's shirt. Torin laughed a real, unguarded sound, and Nisara realized it was the first time she'd heard him laugh. It was a good sound. "He's going to be a troublemaker," Torin said, gently untangling tiny claws from his collar. "I can tell already, like his father was." The words slipped out before Nisara could stop them. "His father?" Torin glanced at her. "If you don't mind me asking, where is he?" Nisara's expression hardened. "Gone. He left before they were born." She looked away. Driven was a warrior, proud and strong. When he learned I was carrying twins rare among my kind, he was pleased. But when they hatched small and weak, when the elders said they wouldn't survive, her wings twitched with agitation. He agreed with them, called them defective, sighed he wouldn't waste his legacy on failures. "He's an idiot," Torin said bluntly. Despite everything, Nisara felt her mouth curve into something almost like a smile. Yes, he is." Ember yawned, showing tiny needle-sharp teeth, and settled into sleep against Torin's chest. Torin looked down at the baby with such tenderness that Nisara's breath caught. "You're good with him," she said quietly. "I always wanted kids." Torin's voice was barely above a whisper. "Emma and I talked about it, but we were always waiting for the right time. And then—" He trailed off. There was no more time. On impulse, Nisara reached out and touched his arm. Her claws rested gently on his sleeve. "You would have been a good father." Torin looked at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. Something passed between them, recognition, understanding, a connection neither of them had words for. "Torin?" Helena's voice broke the moment. She stood in the doorway, eyebrows raised. "Sorry to interrupt, but you have a visitor at the main gate." "Who?" Torin carefully transferred Ember back to Nisara. Helena's expression was troubled. "A dragon, male. He says he's looking for someone named Nisara." Every scale on Nisara's body went rigid. "No. You know him?" Torin asked, already on his feet. "Driven." She pulled both babies close, wings spreading protectively. "He's here. He found me." The common room had been converted into a meeting space. Torin insisted on being present, despite Marissa's protests. Helena stood by the door, arms crossed. And in the center of the room, radiating barely contained fury, stood Driven. He was larger than Nisara, his scales deep crimson edged with black. His horns swept back from his head like curved blades. His tail lashed as he paced, and his eyes cold amber fixed on Torin with undisguised contempt. "You are the human who took what belongs to me," Driven said in accented standard. "I saved a mother and her children from freezing to death," Torin corrected. "Nobody belongs to anybody." Driven's lip curled, revealing fangs. "Nisara was my mate. Those hatchlings carry my blood. They should have been left to die with honor, not dragged to human charity like beggars." "Honor?" Torin took a step forward. "There's no honor in letting babies die. You understand nothing of our ways, Softskin." Driven turned his attention to the medical bay door. "Nisara, come out. This foolishness ends now. The clan will take you back. The elders have reconsidered." The door opened slowly. Nisara emerged, cradling both babies against her chest. She looked smaller somehow, standing in the presence of her former mate. But her voice was steady. "The elders said my children were worthless. They said I should let them die." She lifted her chin. "Now that they've survived, Now the clan wants us back? What changed, Dreven? They are strong enough to be worth resources now. Dreven moved toward her. Word spread of the twins who survived the great cold. The elders see their value. They will be trained as warriors, raised in our ways. As your trophies, you mean. Nisara's eyes flashed silver. To prove your bloodline is strong. To give you status. To give them their birthright. Dreven's voice rose. Do you plan to raise them here? Among humans? To make them soft and weak, depending on machines and charity? I plan to raise them with love, Nisara said quietly. Something they would never receive from you. Dreven went very still. You refuse to return? I refuse to go back to people who only value my sons, now that they've proven themselves. Who would have let them die without a second thought? She glanced at Torin. I choose to stay with those who saw their worth from the beginning. With him? Dreven's gaze swung to Torin, incredulous. With a human? Nisara, have you lost your mind? They are not like us. They are lesser. Stop. The word cracked like a whip. Nisara moved between Dreven and Torin. Torin burned his hands saving my children. He gave us shelter when your clan gave us only cold. He sits with us every day, brings us food, tells us stories. He has shown more strength and honor than any warrior I've known. The room fell silent. Dreven stared at his former mate, as if seeing her for the first time. Then his expression twisted into something ugly. I see. You've developed feelings for this ... creature. How far you've fallen. I've risen, Nisara said softly. For the first time in my life, I've risen. For a moment, Torin thought Dreven might attack. The dragon's muscles bunched, his tail whipped, his wings spread. Helena's hand moved to the weapon at her belt, but then Dreven simply laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Fine, stay here. Raise your hatchlings in this cage of metal and glass. But know this, you are no longer of the Frostwing clan. You are nothing, outcast, and when the cold comes for you again, no dragon will answer your call. I know, Nisara said. I accepted that the moment I left. Dreven looked at her for a long moment, and at the babies in her arms, then finally at Torin. You think you've won something, human? You've won only obligation. She will never be one of you. She will always be other, always different. And you will spend your life caring for children that aren't even your species. I know that too, Torin said quietly. And I don't care. Something flickered in Dreven's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or respect. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold indifference. Then you're a fool. He turned and walked toward the door. Helena opened it, letting in a blast of cold air. At the threshold, Dreven paused. Goodbye, Nisara. I hope your choice brings you happiness. He didn't sound like he meant it. Then he was gone, disappearing into the white landscape beyond the station. The door closed. The silence stretched out finally. Ember let out a small chirp, breaking the tension. Nisara looked down at her babies, then up at Torin. Her silver eyes were wet. I'm sorry, she whispered. I've brought trouble to you. Dreven will tell the clans. They'll know I've chosen ... this. They'll know I ... V ... What? Torin asked gently. What will they know? Nisara's voice broke. That I have feelings I shouldn't have. For someone I shouldn't. Someone who isn't even my kind. A tear slid down her scaled cheek. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should go. I should take my babies and stop. Torin reached out and carefully, so carefully, touched her face. His fingers wiped away the tear. Do you want to go? No, she breathed. But I shouldn't stay. It's not fair to you. What if I want you to stay? The words hung in the air between them. What if? What if I felt something too? Something I thought I'd never feel again? Nisara's eyes went wide. Torin, I'm not saying I understand it. I'm not saying it makes sense. He smiled quickly. I'm just saying that, for the first time in 3 years, I wake up looking forward to the day. Because I get to see you, talk to you, watch you with your kids. His voice dropped. You make me feel alive again. We barely know each other, Isara whispered. But she didn't pull away from his touch. Then let's change that. Stay. Get to know me. Let me get to know you. Torin's thumb traced a ridge of scales along her cheek. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Helena cleared her throat. For what it's worth, I think you're both crazy. But I've never seen my brother smile this much. She moved toward the door. I'll give you some privacy. As Helena left, Frost stirred in Nisara's arms and let out a soft cry. Without thinking, Torin reached over and stroked the baby's head. Frost immediately calmed, nuzzling into his mother's chest. He trusts you, Isara said softly. They both do. And you? Torin asked. Do you trust me? Nisara looked at him, really looked at him. This human who had saved her children, who had listened to her stories, who had stood up to her former mate without hesitation. This man who somehow made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced before. Yes, she said finally. I trust you. Torin smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Then stay, please stay. Outside, snow began to fall gentle this time, not the killing storm that had driven Nisara to his door. Inside, something warmer than any fire began to grow. Okay, Nisara whispered. We'll stay. And as Torin helped her settle back into her nest, as Ember and Frost slept peacefully between them, as their hands human and dragon touched and held, neither of them noticed the cold anymore. They had found something better than survival. They had found each other.